I'm Johnny Campbell and welcome to another TA Talk. We've got a wonderful guest with us this month. We've got Cindy Alisesky, who is the VP of Global Recruitment with GSK. And GSK are an organization with over 100,000 employees, operations in I think 96 countries, and Cindy has been leading that team for the last number of years, doing some pretty marvelous things for such a large organization. So to share with us what the journey has been to date and where we're going in the future, please welcome Cindy. Hi, Cindy.
Hello. Thank you so much.
Well, no, pleasure and great to meet you. We're in London today. You're here on business for the week, but
That's
you
right.
reside in Philadelphia.
That's correct.
And tell me, how long have you been with the business?
I've been with GSK, I can't believe I'm saying this, 20 years.
Wow.
I know. Isn't that crazy? But I've been in this role, as you said, for about 3 years.
Mm-hmm. So what I know that the business has gone through a lot of change. I heard you
Correct.
last year in New York share the story of the journey. At that point, you were 2/3 of the way through a 3-year strategy.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about why there was a need for a 3-year strategy. Maybe what was the business like before the 3-year period, and some of the things you got involved in.
That's right. It was interesting. I think before the 3-year strategy, before I sort of stepped into the role, we saw that recruitment within GSK was extremely dispersed. It was dispersed across regions. It was dispersed across businesses. And I think it had gotten to a point where the customer experience was not what it sort of needed to be for an organization our size. And I think at that point, the leaders of the HR organization said, look, something must be really wrong. We need to sort of call a timeout and pull a team together to do a diagnosis to say, you know, what's going wrong with this recruiting experience. And as a result, they realized that they wanted a head of global recruitment. They posted the role, wanting the role to be based in the UK. And I saw the posting, and I'm not in the UK, I'm in Philadelphia, as you said. And I made a few phone calls and said, you should really consider me. This is a particular passion of mine, and I think I know how I can fix it.
And that obviously worked.
And it obviously worked.
So what were some things that were wrong? So you said it was, it wasn't centralized. It was broken into different countries and roles. So, would you describe it as just, was there really a recruitment organization or culture or philosophy in the business at that point?
No, I don't think so. I think it was a very sort of just in time, just as needed sort of approach to recruitment. About the only thing holding the recruitment organization together was somebody at some point had put in a global ATS, applicant tracking system. And that was in use in about 96 markets.
Okay.
And so, again, but people were using it differently, almost even for different purposes. But that was sort of the one thing. But when you looked across what was going on, you had a variety of different people who were trying to bring people into the organization in very sort of different ways. Really no standard process, no metrics that we could sort of identify, variety of different vendors who probably saw it as an opportunity. And came in and did all sorts of things. So when I took over 3 years ago, it was actually 3 years ago in January, it was an opportunity to really just sort of build something that wasn't really there. And so I think the great thing and what I really used to sort of recruit people to come and help me was, we can't really go down. The only way to go is up.
we can't break it anymore.
Yeah, we can't break it anymore.
So what was the first thing you did? Like, how did you approach such a big change process?
I think we went through all of the work that had been done. So that the HR leadership team had put a small team together to do a diagnosis. So we went through all of that. And I basically said, look, we could really tackle any number of things. But what we have to do is we have to find some things that are going to build the foundation. And we also have to find some things that we can really sort of reach across the organization and get everybody to sort of rally behind. And so the first 3 things we decided to tackle were standard process, right? Surprise, surprise. Standard process, build capability. That was really important because, again, you had recruiters or people who were doing recruitment who were dispersed all over, and there was really no sense of community, no sense of skill building. So build capability was very, very critical. And then the third thing we wanted to tackle was, could we actually get the businesses to do a better job of forecasting their talent needs? So those were the three things that we set off to do. We made sure that we attached a visual to those three things, and then we grounded it with a dashboard. Again, the dashboard, very sort of basic: time to fill, quality of the candidate pool, and satisfaction metrics for both the hiring manager and the candidate. And so it was the combination of our three priorities and then that dashboard that we shared with the community. And I say community, it was really the people who had passwords to the ATS, because that's all we could really get our hands on. So it was really about sharing those things with the community over and over again, so that they started to understand what it was that we were trying to do and trying to accomplish.
But is that not a, and pardon me for saying this, is it not a very bland message to just consistently talk about, like, just, oh, we're going to have better processes, we're going to give you capabilities, we're going to, fix forecasting? Was there, did you have a kind of larger hierarchy, a larger message as well that kind of drove this, or, kind of mantra to get the team behind for the 3-year project?
Yeah, it was very bland. Boring, to be honest.
Important stuff.
It was very important, but it was a very wise person, actually. Came to visit me in Philadelphia, and it was actually the head of our global HR function. And I shared with her our plans. And she said, "This is great. This is exactly what you should be doing. But what else? What else is there? There needs to be sort of, I know it sounds a little cheesy, but there needs to be sort of a higher purpose or a higher calling." She goes, "What is that? Because that's what's going to really sort of generate the energy in the organization." You're absolutely right. You're not going to generate energy by saying, "Yay, let's standardize our processes," although that has to be done.
Yeah.
And so that's when my leadership team and I sort of started to explore and go on a journey of, well, what are we missing? What else is out there? And that's when we landed on, and it was really driven at the time by all of the social media tools that were being used to network, and also mobile phones, right? So all of this networking, we said, well, my gosh, we have 100,000 people in this organization who are all networking with people outside of this organization. How about we use them? So use our 100,000 people to hire the next 100,000 people. And that sort of became our higher purpose and our higher calling. And I think I was at dinner with a bunch of folks at the leadership team, and they were like, well, we could say 100,000, find the next 100,000, but how do we display it in a picture, right? Because words and pictures, you want to try and appeal to as many people as possible, right? And so on the back of a napkin at dinner that night, I drew this diagram, and somebody from my leadership team said, "I know a graphic artist. Let's take that and make that our image." And so with that, sort of our 3-year ambition, with our objectives and our dashboard, was born.
Did you keep the napkin?
No, I didn't. I probably used it to wipe off.
The best strategy of the business for 3 years and thrown away.
I threw it away.
So I take it wasn't all easy. Like,
no, not at all.
Like getting those, that's a big project. There's a lot of people. Like, when did you realize that parts of it were going to be harder than others? Or, was there any kind of moment where you said, "Oh, I didn't realize the scale of this challenge"?
I flew to Singapore. And the reason I flew to Singapore is the Asia market. So the US and the UK represented almost 60% of my volume, right? But the next highest area of the globe that represented a significant amount of volume was Asia. And Singapore is considered our Asia headquarters. So I'm going to Singapore. So I get on a plane, get to Singapore, and immediately the gentleman who is my regional lead for the recruitment operations in Singapore meets me there, and he says, look, I've got you lined up with a few people. At the end of the day, you're going to tell me what you learned. And so I meet with a variety of different folks, most of whom are really sort of interns that they brought in to do recruitment, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but you can't have a full team of interns hiring, a significant portion of your recruitment volume, across Asia without any sort of, skill building, et cetera. And so met with these interns, met with a few other folks, and by the end of the day, it was pretty apparent that the issue and the challenge that we had in Asia was just generally a lack of capability. So it wasn't even really a process issue, and if there were process issues, I needed to fix the capability issue first. And so the head of my Asia recruitment team knew exactly what he was going to do. He was going to go through and determine who on the current team had sort of the learning agility to be able to pick things up and sort of do what we needed them to do. And then for others, we would find them other places to reside in GSK. And then the big piece of our strategy, because we knew we needed to turn around things fast, was to go out to RPO vendors and see if they could provide us with help fast, understand what we were trying to drive, help us do that and do it fast.
It takes a while to get capabilities up there. It doesn't happen overnight.
No, it really doesn't, and I think that's why we took the approach. And we knew it needed to be done really fast, because on my way back from Singapore, I stopped in the UK, and an executive had asked to meet with me. And they called me into this meeting room, and they brought like a big stack of papers, and they just threw the papers on the table in front of me. They just threw the papers on the table and said, I'd like to go through each one of these and tell you the complaints of all of the line managers about hiring in Asia. And I'm like, nope, just been there. It's good. We have a plan. Why don't you let me tell you what we're going to do to fix it? And I guess just to sort of follow up on that story, my head of recruitment for Asia, who is still there, called me up 2 weeks ago and said, hey, you know how we had all those senior leaders fly out to Singapore to do a review? And I was like, hey, he goes, I got up to give my big recruitment presentation, and they basically said, no, John, you could sit down. We need to focus our energy and effort over there. Recruitment's all good.
That's a transformation.
It's a transformation.
See,
absolutely.
And you mentioned the dashboard that underpinned these three core initiatives, right? So I assume you had kind of hard metrics in each of those areas you were looking to measure. Tell me a little bit about what they were, what your baseline was going into it, and how you've ended up 3 years later.
I guess that was one of the things I was kind of blessed with, was the fact that I didn't have to implement an ATS system. So we had one in 96 markets. Yeah. So yay. So we were able to extract some sort of baseline data from that. Again, I know the dashboard we put in place was simple, but it was right for the time and the place we were in. So our first metric was time to fill. From what we could tell from the data we had at the time, 3 years ago, we were probably tracking anywhere in the 110 to 150 day range in terms of filling roles, which is unacceptable probably by any benchmark, really. The second metric we chose to look at was the quality of the candidate pool. I'm a huge proponent of this. I mean, I think it is the recruiter's responsibility. They're completely accountable to deliver a quality candidate pool based on what the line manager is after. And at that particular time, we were looking at about 10% of everything the recruiter was turning over, the line manager deemed appropriate for interview.
So 9 out of 10 resumes sent to line managers were sent right back.
That's correct.
Wow.
That's correct. And that was probably, I would say, that was probably the biggest metric to move.
I'd agree,
right?
yeah.
That was the biggest one to move. And then the third metric we put in place was satisfaction, again, for both the candidate as well as the hiring manager. We set up a simple survey, 5-point scale, and we set ourselves a target of 4.5.
It's ambitious.
That's very ambitious. So flash forward, so where are we today, right, if we look at all of those metrics? In terms of time to fill, we are currently tracking at approximately 70 days.
It's a big jump.
Which is huge. So really, really good, and a big sort of acknowledgement to my regional leaders who really sort of take the global ideas, the global standards, the global processes, and they know how to take those and sort of adapt them for a local market. So time to fill, we're looking at about 70 days. In terms of our candidate quality, this is probably the one I'm the most proud of. The candidate quality, we're at 50%.
Wow.
50%.
1 in 2 resumes get called forward.
That's exactly right.
That's well above industry standard, like well above.
I couldn't be more proud, and that's really due to, it's really due to a few things. We emphasize the importance of strategy meetings, and we trained all of our recruiters on how to conduct good strategy meetings. We would shadow them. We would provide them with different tools so they knew the right questions to ask. And it was just sort of over and over again. In addition to that, we had to train them how to, please don't laugh, but we had to train them how to phone screen. A lot of them had
the challenge, yeah.
A lot of them had not done that before. And so the combination of strategy meeting and phone screen, just constantly focusing on those, and again, that fell into our process standard, if you recall the objective we had, and the capability building was probably the two together. Really focusing on that, I think, has produced that 50% metric. So really, really proud of that. And then finally, in terms of the candidate satisfaction. So our candidate satisfaction, we actually hit the 4.5. There is a slight flaw in that we only sort of survey those who we actually hire.
Okay.
So we definitely need to, so one of the things we want to do is sort of expand that beyond, so that we're looking at all folks who sort of enter the process. But we can talk about that when we talk about the next,
that's a different thing.
Next 3 years. And our hiring manager survey right now is about 4.1 out of 4.5. So we feel that that's pretty good in terms of where we want to be. And we're currently sort of picking that apart to see what are some things we can do. We actually think we have a challenge in that the way we treat our internal candidates is slightly different than the way we treat external. Okay. We think that's what's causing the lower than what we would like to see in terms of the line managers.
But considering benchmark, you can only assume it was in the 2s and 3s best on both scores before, if you had been surveying before then.
Absolutely.
So it's an amazing achievement to get an organization the size of GSK, which is acquiring new businesses all the time, expanding, bringing in different organizations, hiring 15, 20,000 people on busy years.
That's right.
To get to that point is fantastic. What would you say were your big learnings? Like the 2 or 3 big things that you say, you know what, this is why we were successful. This is if I was to do it again, I would not deviate from these 2 or 3 core things.
Yeah, absolutely. If I did it again, I definitely would not deviate from having simple objectives that people can really understand. I think having that standard process, build capability, and then drive the organization to forecast a little better. So having those 3 things and sort of repeating them over and over again. I flew to Belgium. It was probably within the first 6 months that I took the job. I flew to Belgium, and when I got to the offices, hanging on the wall, and they had blown it up into a big poster, were the 3 objectives.
Wow.
And I was like, this is great.
They get it.
They get it. This is great. And then they showed me the dashboard and how they were tracking the dashboard again on a big wall. We didn't tell them to do this. This is how they were taking it and sort of making it their own. So it's having those 3 clear objectives and a corresponding dashboard that everybody can sort of rally behind and understand. And then the third thing, I'd be really sort of remiss if I didn't mention the fact that my leadership team, absolutely important. And it's made up of a combination of folks who sit in the regions that are responsible for that pull-through and that delivery, and a combination, and the other side of that are folks that sit in the global space. So just to give you an example, we have 5 regional leads. So the one in Asia I told you about, I met him actually within the first few months of taking the job. He was responsible for China. I sort of noticed his talent right away and sort of made him responsible for all of Asia. So we have an Asia regional lead, a regional lead for the MEA CIS region, regional lead for Latin America, Europe, and then GSK is a little unusual in that we have a regional lead for US, UK. It's just how the business sort of classifies that part of the world. I don't know. It really doesn't make any sense to anybody else other than us. And then sitting globally, we have a head of global process. We have a head of global branding. And then we have a head of global operations, which includes our systems as well as our metrics.
Technology and everything else.
Okay.
Cindy, sounds like an amazing 3 years. The next 3 years, kind of looking into 2021, I think are going to be awesome. I'm really hoping that we see GSK as one of those leading lights, talking about not just the internal experience and processes, which you don't get to talk about that too much. I think people, the brands that have a much more consumer focus and have got to that point get all the limelight. And I'm really excited that in 3 years' time or less, we'll hopefully be hearing about the fantastic experience, the digitization, your ideas and excitement around that consumer kind of app and e-commerce experience coming to the world of recruiting in a measurable way. I think the team has the capabilities. You have the capability as a leader in the leadership team. And it's exciting times. So maybe we'll do this again in 2021 and try and capture what that second 3 years has been, if you don't mind.
We'll meet right here.
Cindy, thank you. Been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Hope you've enjoyed that and learned a lot from how Cindy's team have put this together, and how, by being focused on good leadership, really strong leadership and crystal clear focus on messaging and the right metrics consistently throughout that process, but also inspiring the team with the bigger vision and that purpose, which too often is talked about like it's fuzzy, but has such value in trying to transform organizations on that scale. We'll be back next month again with another TA Talk, and if you have a story similar to share with the world, please do reach out to us. We'd love to hear it. Until next time, thanks for your time.